It says I'm feeding. It'll take it's going to take 30 seconds or so for that feed to get there. Yeah, I'm just going to feed it. We're going to stop. You have me or not? That's probably true. Okay. I'm feeding. That's China. A fair amount of cloud noise coming off of the feed. Do I know you need to do something here? I have no viewers. Okay. I do not show a viewer, but this thing is very, very. This thing doesn't actually work in real time. If you're here in the end, I don't really care if I have viewers or not. Now, let's try. It's going to be a little bit more complicated. I'm going to flip this thing around. I'm going to try to show the so this thing to see the beam. A little bit more complicated. Yeah, I turned it around. Okay. Now let's try. Let's just test. Let's just test the ability to do it. But
Please be seated.
We are going to be opening the funeral service Levaya for David Rayman of Mordechai ben Eliezer, Zichrono Bracha, the recitation of 2 chapters of Tehillim, recited by 2 of the grandchildren from Israel, recited from Beit Shemesh, first Shai Rayman, followed by Shlomo Rayman. One moment.
Put your audio on speaker. Turn it off. Speak now. Shlomo, please speak now. Fill the audio and video. Please speak now. Start again, please. Start again, please.
Our community is saddened, deeply saddened, and be devastated at the death of David Rayman, Zichrono Levaya. Today being Rosh Chodesh, will be tapered as Spaden, many eulogies, but each of them tapered in honor of the sanctity of Rosh Chodesh. David himself would often say that he doesn't like long eulogies. I would like to offer a brief thought to his memory. We recited this morning, Shirei David Abdecha Anishmonim Birecha, that the songs of David, your servant, are reverberating in the entire city, Jerusalem. So often mentioned as a possible miracle in which the Shiras HaLeviim, the songs of the Leviim in the temple in Jerusalem, resonated across the entire city. You may ask, why was this miracle necessary? And I believe that the answer is from a story in the Talmud which all our children and grandchildren study in great depth. King David had a harp. The harp was played by a gentle breeze in the middle of the night, wherein he composed many of his Tehillim, his psalms. It was exactly at midnight. Chatzos Layla. King David taught us that you don't surrender to the conquest of night. And when darkness envelops a human being or envelops a nation, there is still hope. And you still find reason and cause to sing. And the victory over night is subsequently the victory of our nation through so many travails, so much Yisurim. David taught the people of Jerusalem around Israel that his songs need to resonate, and they need to suffuse the entirety of the city and uplift and inspire. And Rosh Chodesh, at a time of renewal, one has a resurgence of this great hope and of this great victory, initiated by King David. Today you will hear many dimensions of the life of David, Zichrono Livracha. A devoted husband and father, grandfather, and brother, marvelous friend, founding member of our Chevra Kadisha, and much more. I would like to focus on Shirei David Avdecha, on the melody of your servant David. Everything about David's life was indeed a melody. Every community requires an individual who will uplift and inspire. Every community kehillah requires a person that will give us an injection of hope. David carried that sacred task so nobly, so beautifully. The melody of David, I'm not referring to just music, although he loved singing and a special way of singing Zmiros and his Kiddush. But I'm talking about the melody of his speech. To dispel the clouds of darkness from the lives of those whom he touched. And he did that with unbelievable grace. Every time you met David, there was always a statement, everything is okay. Everything is wonderful. Everything is good. Whatever challenges he may have felt, and everyone has challenges in life, everything was okay. And then he would always add a little bit humor. Always something at the end that would leave people ready for the day and ready to meet the challenges of the day. In the Mishnayos class that he attended maybe close to 7 years, almost daily, he left everyone with a humorous comment, although, again, with brilliant insight. He always wanted to know, and his brilliance in his language was a melody, because he always wanted to know how the Mishnah and how Torah Shabbal Peh addresses social justice and ethical issues. When he would walk in, he would say, what's the chapter and what's the Mishnah number? So everyone would say, chapter 8, Mishnah 5. 85, he said? That was my blood pressure reading this morning. Shirei David. And he did that for so many years. That was the kind of humor, the kind of nusach v'yichusa that carried him through life, and that carried his beloved family through life, and which is so memorable. He was a founding member of the Chevra Kadisha, very serious moments in life. He knew the art of when to be humorous, and when to be devoted and committed, and when to be intense. That art and that balance. That was part of Shirei David Avdecha. We were truly privileged. This is not the time to give praise according to halacha to the living. I'll just briefly mention that Phyllis is a devoted wife for so many years. Phyllis, a master teacher, taught her children and taught her community how to stand by the side of the husband through his illness, through his battle for life, his battle with the Malach above us. She was there constantly. And the affection and love that she gave her husband is something that the children will always remember. So it's a brilliant example. How do we conclude that tefillah that I mentioned in my opening remarks? Avas olam tavi lahem. Enduring love, Almighty, you will bring to them. Our community has enduring love and affection for David, Zechariah Levaya. He will remain always irreplaceable and unforgettable. Eulogies will be given as follows. We're going to begin with Sylvia, the granddaughter, who will deliver the comments of her brother Harry at Chemish, followed by Adin, the grandson, who will speak on behalf of the grandchildren, followed by the children, Louis, Rabbi Moshe, Linda, and Esty, followed by the wife, Phyllis. Concluding remarks will be given by Richie Miller on behalf of our Kaddish, on behalf of the many friends of David, then by our Vice President, David Barrett, on behalf of the Shul administration. So,
this is something my brother wrote, but he's in Israel, so I'm reading for him. So many of my childhood memories revolve around Papa. I remember when he and Salta would take Sylvia and I to the West Hempstead pool, and for hours we would watch us swim and jump off the diving board. And we'd all go back to his and Salta's house, and he would make a barbecue, or maybe we would go to Rayman Levaya. There were also numerous small and goofy things he would do when we were younger that are still to this day vivid in my memory. The way he clanked on his glasses and plates before he won't see with his knife, turning an ordinary kitchen set into an elaborate drum kit. Then there was the fear of zucchini, and me and my cousins, by threatening us that he would force us to eat zucchini. My most recurring engagement with Papa had to be on the chessboard. Practically every time we were together, we would play chess. And aside from the Shabbos and the bar mitzvah, he beat me every time, although I'm fairly certain that was a form of a very sentimental bar mitzvah present. Aside from the treasured quality time with my grandfather and the challenge and excitement of playing somebody so talented, I appreciated that from a very young age he respected me. Often adults don't regard kids in high enough standard to beat them in games. Papa always respected me and wanted to help me grow. And therefore, we really played in chess. I always have and always will appreciate that. One last thing. It's something I've never articulated before, but it's the quality of Papa I most admire and hope to emulate as well one day. It's how much he and Softa love each other. He would always tell me stories about how Softa visited him in the army. To see them together was to see how there was a team working together to raise all of their grandchildren and show them a good time. And we never ever had the attitude of, I'm too old for this. But we're always looking for more fun activities for us to do together. Their love for one another, while never too extravagant, was always beautifully apparent.
Hello, my name is Adin Rayman. I'm the oldest son of Louis Rayman and the third grandchild of my beloved grandfather, David Rayman. I speak today On behalf of the 14 Raymond, Shiner, and Ganjian grandchildren, and one Schiff-Miller great-grandchild, Hannah, Shai, Shlomo, Gabi, Binyamin, Harry, Sylvia, Noah, Eli, Rafi, Sally, Sophie, Danielle, and of course, my brother Yitzhak. Many of my cousins are not here today in America to mourn with us, and some of them are too young to retain many memories of our dear grandfather. To all of these cousins of mine, both here in America and across the globe in Israel, both who will remember today and those who will not, I want to offer my deepest gratitude. I want to thank you for being a part of a family that has enriched my life so much, and I am sure enriched the life of our grandfather more than we can ever imagine. As I look back on my years with my grandfather, I realize that my memory of him is not defined by any singular episode. Although there were trips and other distinctive moments with my grandfather and my grandmother, my memories of him are dominated by the everyday, and more importantly, they are dominated by his consistency through the everyday. I remember, I guess, a little bit less than 22 Thanksgiving dinners with my grandfather, always seated in the same place at the head of the table, almost always pouring himself some schnapps or whiskey at the end of dinner, and winking towards me and telling me, "This stuff is terrible, you don't want any." I remember dozens of barbecues on the back deck of my grandparents' house, with my grandfather always standing in the same spot, with the spatula and tongs and aluminum pan always in the same places. I remember at every visit, family gathering, him asking the same questions to my father and to my uncle, always about the same topics, about their health, about their jobs, asking me and my brother and my cousins very similar questions year to year. My grandfather was, in my knowledge of him, an unbelievably consistent man, but his consistency was always defined and colored by a profound compassion for those who he loved. During the first 2 years of my time in college, I was blessed with an opportunity that I will never cease to be grateful for. It is an opportunity that most grandchildren, in my estimation, do not have. I spent 2 years here in the Young Israel of West Hempstead running the local B'nai Akiva chapter, but far more importantly than any B'nai Akiva related goals or job, I had the opportunity to spend 2 Shabbatot every month in the house of my grandparents, eating 2 meals with them for pretty much 4 meals a month for 2 years. And the true blessing was the time that I was able to spend with my grandfather, and my grandmother. Those Shabbatot, just as family visits had always been peppered with, were peppered with questions that would become more familiar with every visit. He would ask almost every time when midterms or finals began, even if they had began the week before or the week after. He would ask almost every week how many more semesters I had until graduation. And most lovingly, he would ask every time I left the house on Saturday night, even after I had driven to and from West Hempstead dozens of times, if I knew how to get home and if I had enough gas to do so. Every dessert on Shabbos would be introduced with a brief history of Reister's Bakery here in West Hempstead. And every Shabbat morning, he would insist that I eat breakfast or have something to drink before heading to shul, even though I declined his offer every week. My grandfather's inquiries and remarks never felt tired or tasted of staleness. Through his consistency, he displayed his never-wavering love and his internal compassion for his children and his grandchildren. Many of us are familiar with the Midrash in this week's Parsha that states that on one day in the ark, Noach delayed in feeding the lions. Because of this delay, the Midrash tells us that the lion bit him, or the lioness bit him, and this bite permanently crippled Noah. There's much to discuss about and the lesson we can learn of this attack of the lion on Noah, but I believe an equally powerful lesson can be found in the background of this Midrash, a lesson that my grandfather epitomized so beautifully. Noah spent, by every estimation, over 350 days on the ark, And each day, he was charged with the exact same task. His charge was, perhaps somewhat monotonously, to feed the animals, to care for the animals in a timely fashion, a mission that I'm sure we can imagine might become stale, might become uninspired as the days and weeks and months passed on. But we see Noah tarried only once, that only once during, according to this midrash, over his year or more on the ark, did he for the slightest moment waver, and he felt the consequences of that moment. My grandfather, I believe, never wavered. His mission as a wife to my beloved grandmother, as a father to my beloved aunts and uncles and my father, and as a grandchild to me and my cousins, required unwavering constancy. And he surely succeeded in that mission. My grandfather was the Noah of our family. He was always there for our family, never tiring or tarrying, always epitomizing, just as Noah did, an unwavering consistency in support of those who he loved and cared for. Today, we mourn the pillar of our family. I would always tell my grandfather that I do, in fact, know how to get back home. And today, without him, I cannot say I am as positive. I pray that his memory bring comfort to my loving grandmother, my father, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, and to those here who loved him so very much. I pray that his legacy of love and constancy and steadiness for those he loved be an inspiration for us all. And I pray that his soul be bound in the bond of eternal life.
This is Tehillim, Kapitel Tesvav. Mizmor leDavid. Adonai mi yabur ba'alecha, mi yishkon b'har kodshecha. Holech tamim u'foel tzedek, v'dover emes v'lvavo. Lo rogel al shono, lo asa l're'ehu ra'ah, v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo. Im zeh be'inav nim'as, v'yasirei Adonai yichaved, nishma l'hara lo yamir. Chaspo lo nasan b'meshach, v'shochad al makilo l'kach, I was saying to Hillel at my father's bedside on Sunday afternoon when this one came up, Psalm 15. David HaMelech is describing the attributes of who is worthy of Yishkon B'Har Kodshecha, who is worthy of dwelling in God's presence on His holy mountain. It occurred to me that this is a description of my father. As my son mentioned, constant. One who goes through his daily life in a pure, upstanding way, doing what is right because of what is right, not spreading gossip, dealing faithfully with his friends, not holding a grudge, showing respect and friendship to his fellow Yirei Shemayim, always keeping his word, even when it's not for his own benefit, honest in all his dealings. Someone like that, the parent concludes, someone who does these things will never be moved, will never falter, will never lose his way. One who bases his life on these principles will have an immovable foundation on which to build a home and a family. This portrait of honesty is to instill in us, his children and his grandchildren, but never via a lecture. He never would have to tell us this, just by example. The times he would be upset with me personally, it was when that wasn't when I would have messed up. It was when I wouldn't fess up to messing up. That's when he would just look at me. He wouldn't have to give the lecture, just say, Louis, I'm disappointed. That was enough. He'd look on his face, I would know that I haven't lived up to his standards. And the opposite look on his face, I remember the very first time I stood, it wasn't up here, it was in the old building. The very first time I ever spoke publicly in shul. The seats were different. The men's section went up, I remember. I had gotten to shul early. It was on a Shabbos or Yom Tov afternoon. I went to the base medrash to get all my svarim in order. And when it was my turn to speak, where's my father? And he was up all the way in the back, very, smiling, very proud. Again, he wouldn't boast, like how wonderful his children are, how good we were doing in school. He just had a smile on his face. They really are proud. That was enough. He would never boast about anything. That was more than 30 years ago. I saw the same exact look on his face. It was one time this past summer. We were all at my sister Etsy's house. The kids, especially the boys, are running around playing some combination of basketball and soccer and a couple of other things all at the same time. And they're yelling, "Grandpa, look at me." And he's sitting there. He wasn't able, like when we were little, he could play with us, but he was just watching. And he had the same exact look on his face. He's very proud. He's very happy. That's, as my son said, the constancy, the example he would say. Don't boast, just be proud of your children and set an example. Goodbye. He's our father.
At the end of Sefer Shmuel Beis, the 2nd Samuel, we find the final shira, the final song, or perhaps even the final nevuah of David HaMelech. And it's not a very well-known pasuk, but the pasuk introduces it. Ve'elu divrei David ha'achronim. These are the last words of David. Then introduces him Ne'um David ben Yishai, U'Ne'um hagever hu kam al, Mashiach Elohei Yaakov, U'Ne'im Zmiros Yisrael. These are the words of David, the son of Yishai, the words of the man who was established above all. He was the anointed one of the God of Jacob, and usually translated, it's very hard to translate, Ne'im Zmiros Yisrael, the sweet singer of Israel. This is, of course, the source of the name of the tefillah, Anim Zmiros, comes from this pasuk. So what were David HaMelech's last words? What were his last shira? If you read the next few psukim, and then it's very hard to understand. But what clearly emerges are the same themes that we see throughout Sefer Tehillim. Right? He refers to the tzaddik, B'adam Moshel Yiras Elohim, U'Choor Boker Yizrach Shemesh. And then he refers to the wicked, U'V'Liyal Kikotz, Lunad, Kulaham. Very hard words, even harder than most of Tehillim, and unfamiliar because we don't say them very often. But again, these words sound very similar to what I'm coining a new phrase now, Divrei David HaRishonim, the first words of David. The words we have from David throughout Sefer Tehillim is always referring to the praise of the tzaddikim, V'yokeh Shasul HaKal Gemayim, which we read previously over here. And then Lochen HaRishaim Kim Kamotz, the evil, right, are like chaff. In the end, the evil were like a coat, and here they're like a chaff, very similar. So what is it? The words sound the same. And the Malbim even hints to this because when he describes the two ways David HaMelech are described, Divrei David ben Yishai, he says that refers to the youthful David, the David who was the shepherd behind with the sheep. And when it refers to Hagever hu kamal Mashiach Elohei Yaakov, that is the elder David, the David HaMelech. So this raises the question: were his original words the same as his final words? There was nothing new here. David HaMelech's life experience gave him nothing new to say. A central theme throughout Sefer Tehillim is about how we said how the good will triumph and the evil will perish. And any evil that befalls tzaddikim are because of their shortcomings. Right? And then when the evil befalls the wicked, it is their just deserts. But this message didn't change or evolve throughout David's life. The same message, the same youthful enthusiasm about how the world should run. Right? So it's quite remarkable if you think about it. So Bishlam, as a young shepherd, he can have this rosy view of existence. But after all his trials and tribulations from without, from within, from Shaul, from his own family, he can still, at the end of his life, maintain that the righteous will shine like the morning sun and the wicked are like chaff in the wind. And just to repeat, but a different type of consistency from my nephew, what a remarkable faith and consistency David HaMelech had. He did not let his proper world be confused by the complexities of his life. He never took his eye off the ball. The same faith and principles that he formulated as a young man remained steady and guided him throughout his whole life. Here today we are recounting Divrei David Achronim, not necessarily of David ben Ishai, not of Mashiach Elokei Yaakov, but David Mordechai ben Eliezer, David the son of Bela and Loomis Rayman, my father. Orphaned at a very young age, he missed out on a father figure. His father, my grandfather, Louis Rayman, died in 1944. My father recalled his memories of him were walking to shul on Shabbos and doing a dam tzvardeya at the Seder. My father was, I think, 8 years old when his father passed away. According to my Uncle Irving, Zichron Livracha, my father's brother, my grandfather was a brilliant man, and my grandmother would always tell me when I was little that he learned in the great yeshivas of Poland, in the Lomza Yeshiva. He had smicha from the Lomza Yeshiva, studied for advanced degrees in America. Anyway, that was my grandfather. Of course, being raised by my father had two father figures that I could discern. His brother, my Uncle Irving, whose wife and daughter are with us today, and another person called Mr. Aaron Sorsha. Irv, my uncle, followed the Dodgers to Los Angeles. My father never forgave them, the Dodgers, that is. He loved and admired Irving so much, and I believe the feeling was mutual. In addition, Irv was very proud of his nieces and nephews and our families, and that meant a tremendous amount to my father. Mr. Aaron Sorsha introduced my father to the Chevra Kadisha in Brooklyn at a very young age. And he taught my father the true value of life and how fleeting it could be. My father was a founding member of the Chevra Kadisha here, and from what I understand, was one of the first to bring real hands-on experience, to the new young Chevra here. My father understood the value of Chesed Shel Emes and insisted that his reward be saved for the next life. That was always one of his favorite sayings. He recalled to me my father recalled to me two taras that he did. Early on as a teenager, one of his contemporaries had passed away. Mr. Shosha brought him to the Tara and made him look at his friend and say, "Dave," and he read. My father would say this with such intensity. "You think you're going to live forever?" The message remained with my father for all his life. The other Tara he recalled to me was the most difficult one he did, and that was the Tara for Daniel Weinberg, Oliver Shaw. He encouraged me to join the Chevra Kadisha in Teaneck in Eretz Yisrael, but it was something I unfortunately was never able to. I haven't fulfilled that command of his, that request of his yet. When he was younger, he served in the U.S. Army. He kept kosher in the U.S. Army, which was not really very easy in those days. He said he would eat a lot of salad, right? And the food that his mother and my mother, who they were already going out, would bring him. There's a family lore of a story about my mother brought for him tongue, cooked tongue, and my father didn't like tongue. So he ended up giving it to his commander. And then, I don't know if it's true or not, but the commander then, when the rest of the unit shipped out to wherever they were going, he said, "Dave, you stay here," because he thought he might get some more. My father had the ability of defining a core principle or value and not getting confused by false hope and rhetoric. One of these principles is don't be a chazer. And another one was he was very risk averse. You have something, it's enough. You don't need to risk it, to try and get more and more. One story, some of us in the room are familiar with this. I worked at Lehman Brothers and have for many years and accumulated much Lehman stock over the years. And the stock went up, which kept going up and up and up. The CEO had said that it was at 85, it split twice, and it was going up to 200. So I'm like, I'm going to be rich. The stock's going up to 200. He says, "Don't be an idiot, sell it now." Don't believe in this. You already did well. You held on to it for too long. It did well. Sell it now. I didn't listen. The shares were at 86. I dumped them at $7 a share. And that was the last time I did not follow my father's investment advice. Even when he was already getting older, right, he still had this remarkable consistency and didn't worry about what other people thought. Just another anecdote. I had to take him once to Hadassah Hospital when he was feeling dizzy on one of his visits one of his many visits to us in Beit Shemesh. So first he saw an ENT who diagnosed him with some sort of airplane-related vertigo and had some medication for it. Then we had to wait a few hours before we saw the neurologist. But the ENT had promised that there'll be a prescription for medication for this vertigo in the packet when they release you from the hospital later on. Every nurse we saw from that minute on, every doctor, every orderly, he would say, I'm supposed to get a prescription for the vertigo. Is it going to be there? And they all said, yes, Mr. Raymond. Mr. Raymond. Yeah, and they all just, poo-pooed in. We were already telling him, Dad, stop it already. It's not, you're being crazy. When we released from the hospital and we got the packet, guess what wasn't in there? That prescription. My father chose a career which would allow him to spend time with his family, allow him to continue to provide for his family after his retirement. And he constantly badgered us and warned us about we should put money away when I was in America to the 401k, and even if it means skimping now. He would gently ask us and poke us about his grandchildren and their prospects for parnasa. And for us Israelis, that's very hard, because he didn't quite cop my father how we have to spend so much time in yeshiva and then at the army before he could even think about college. He never really got his head around that. He was very proud of his job. He worked for many years in the IRS as a federal treasury agent, especially for the time he worked for Rudy Giuliani. And he would tell me how appalled he was when he would see that members of our faith community would not live up to his standards or, acting within the law. He even told me a story, the most appalling story, there was a person whose mother put up her house for his bail, someone from our faith community, and then the guy skipped bail. And they had to take away her mother's house. He attended the 6:30 minyan faithfully here every morning until he retired. Then I think he graduated to a later minyan. So like the original David HaMelech, he was remarkably consistent in his values, never let things around him confuse him, always kept his eye on the ball. The things were important remained important. But he still had the capacity to learn and to change and grow, even in his final years. My father had no formal Jewish education, but he always attended shiurim. I remember going with him to Rabbi Gold's Farlei Chumash shiur in that room over there. I'm sure there are many people here who remember that. He enjoyed discussing Divrei Torah so much. He had this simcha, this shashuei Torah. When we discussed Torah, he would always have this smile on his face. And he had his favorite topics. He always badgered me why we still have to keep Yom Tov Sheni in Eretz Yisrael. And no matter how many times I explained it to him and tried to explain it to him, he would always say that, he would always point out that it doesn't really make sense. And he was right. But we still keep Yom Tov Sheni in Chutz La'aretz. His favorite question, they didn't have an answer, he'd always repeat it over. If you look in the Hallel, on the pasuk, Ana Hashem Hoshiana, on the Hoshiana, there are the dagesh in the nun, there are the dots in the nun. But in Ana Hashem Hatzlichana, there are no dots in the nun. And he challenged everyone who can give an answer. So for years I've been researching this topic, and I have some bad answers, but not any good ones. You can come to me after the Shiva, and I will share them with you. And around 6 years ago, an amazing thing happened. With the encouragement of Rabbi Chigger Alav Shalom, my father joined the Mishnah class. Every time he would speak from then on, he would always tell me what Mishnah they were learning, ask me questions, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, my father is learning Torah every single day. He never went to yeshiva, as I said before, but to start learning, to start being kovea itim la Torah every day at the age of 70 or in the early 70s is an incredible thing. He would share his amazement with the crazy, unrealistic cases in the Mishnah. I remember just one case. They talk about the Kohen shechting the korban al manas to be zorik the dam chutzuz mano. He was just saying, why on earth would anybody even do that? Think about the case. And now we know right now, my father could proudly answer yes, that in Shemayim, when we all will go up there, right, they ask you those famous questions. So on the question of Kavata Itim the Torah, right, my father can finally say yes, he was Kavata Itim the Torah. When I visited West Hempstead, I would go to the Mishnah class with him sometimes. It was the highlight of his day, and he much appreciated the rabbis and the laymen that led the class and who gave the class. It really meant so much to him. I would just like to end off with the pasuk before the one that we started with. Right before Eila Divrei David Afronim, there's a very well-known pasuk. We can all recite it together. We can originally refer to David HaMelech, but it could refer to us too. Megdol Yeshuos Malko, the Osa Chesed and Shircho, the David Uzaro Arovam. May God continue to give Chesed to David and to his descendants forever.
forgiveness twice because my husband is not going to be that good. And also because he was not a fan of a lot of speeches, and we are doing exactly not what he would have wanted. So, Daddy, please forgive us one last time. Some things I remember about my father, David Rayman. All his friends called him Dave. He was just always there, always with my mom. If he wasn't, he was in one of three places: in shul, out for a walk, or at Echo Park in the steam room. Recently, you could add a fourth place, Easterers. He loved to go for long walks in his younger days. I remember when my sister was born, he was so proud, pushing Esty in a stroller all over West Hempstead. Everyone would stop and ask, "Is that your granddaughter?" He didn't mind. He never had a bad or mean word to say. I don't think I ever heard him speak Lashon Hara. He loved to talk about Torah, politics, his children's work life, current events, and of course his grandchildren, but never other people. That was just not his way. He davened 3 times a day no matter what, and went to morning minyan every day for as long as I can remember. When he fell and broke his hip, I was determined to find him a way to keep doing that when he got home from the hospital, by arranging rides. I asked someone to help, and the person said he would have to make sure we asked the right people, because my father was always one of the first men there, on time or early every day. He loved to play chess, to play Friday night and Shabbos with friends and neighbors, then with my son Harry since he was a little boy. They played chess together whenever we would go to West Hempstead for Shabbos or Yom Tov, or when my parents would visit Riverdale. Harry is 20 years old, and he beat my dad one time, and now I know that was real. You don't know that was real. Everyone loved my dad, including my friends. One of his favorites of my friends was Barbara, a nurse manager at the hospital where my dad spent the last 2 months of his life. She came and visited my dad and mom every day, multiple times a day. Thank you, Barbara. Father served in the U.S. Army. He now has 2 grandsons, currently serving in the IDF. When he retired from the IRS, he went in a new direction. He wanted to become an actor. He went to acting classes, he got headshots, and he went on auditions. He was actually in an infomercial or 2. Every time he would come back from an audition, he would be excited for weeks, telling everyone of his latest adventures. My dad lost his dad when he was only 8 years old. He had one older brother, Irving, whom he idolized. His wife Elaine and daughter Lisa had traveled in from California to be here. My father was very proud to have made it to the age that he did. The oldest male Rayman in his family, the first to make it to 70, he would always say. He was raised by a single mother and grew up to be a loving husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, Shomer Torah U'Mitzvot, founding member of the Chevra Kadisha. And he did it on his own, without a father to show him. My siblings and I, and our children, the last of which he never met, Sophie, was born on my dad's 79th birthday while he was in the hospital. We're blessed to have such a great role model to learn from and show us the way. Thank you, Daddy. Lydia M. Child, famously known for her song Over the River and Through the Woods, once said, "Blessed indeed is a man who hears many gentle voices call him father." My father was a very, very blessed man. Despite the fact that he lost his own father at the age of 8, he managed to become an exemplary man, brother, husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. Over the years, he was privileged to hear so many children call him daddy, grandpa, papa, and uncle. The last time I spoke to my father was to tell him that I gave birth to our baby girl, so his birthday. And although he never heard her voice, I'm sure he hears it now. There were many things that were very important to my father, and he made sure that they would always be important to us. Going to shul and davening every day, and even though he didn't have a real Jewish education in school, that all of our kids always went to yeshiva. And now that I learn with our children, I realize there are so many lessons that we teach them that were just so innate to him. To always speak the truth, no matter what,
to see the good to every situation, to never speak badly about anybody, no matter anything, and chesed shel emet, that he took care of many people who were never able to say thank you to repay. And he had many phrases, words of wisdom that he would say throughout the years, and I'm sure many of you here have heard him say them. No good deed goes unpunished. He always quoted our Uncle Irving, his brother, who said, never go to the doctor. And he himself was a doctor. Every time I would show up, we would all come over, he would say, it's so nice to see you. And then he would say, and it's so nice to see you all go. Everything was always, he was talking, he would always say, down there, even if that was geographically incorrect. Whenever you saw him on the street, I'd pick him up, call him on the phone and say, hi, Dad. He'd say, oh, things couldn't be any better. And every time we get together, he ends it for any reason, dinner, lunch, barbecues. He always ends it every party saying, we have to leave early now. We have another party to go to. And although he left us too early, it's good to know that he was in a better place with his family. And there's this poem that I remember reading when I was in nursing school that I thought I wanted to share with everybody. It's called The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of the birth, and he spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth, and that only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is we live in love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and always try to understand the way other people feel. And be less quick to anger and show appreciation and love people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to be rehashed, but you be proud of the things you say and how you spent your dash. And I'm very proud of my father's dash.
Those were tough acts to follow. I'm going to try. Dave and I met in March 1958 at a Hillel dance in Brooklyn College, which neither of us attended at the time. I was 17 years old, a high school senior, and he was a tall, handsome senior in college with Paul Newman eyes. That and his sense of humor had me hooked from the start. Then he went to Grossman's to work as a busboy during Pesach, and sent me a picture postcard, packet, from a hotel with the inscription, thought I'd drop you a line. And when I opened it, a long line of postcards dropped it. Some of you may remember those things. We were married 2 years later. We had a wonderful, love-filled marriage of 55 years, raised outstanding children, had and continue to have joy and nachas from them and their beloved children. We love for our children also. And we have been zocheh to have fabulous grandchildren, the youngest of which, Sophie, was born, as you heard, on David's birthday just 7 weeks ago. And one great-grandchild so far, King Yirgul, Daniel Meir of Haifa. David was so proud of everyone. And his graciousness and sense of humor was such that even in the hospital, in the better days, when the nurses, doctors would say, good morning, Mr. Rayman, how are you today? He would say, things couldn't be any better. And then he would add, you know who first said those words? The captain of the Titanic. Before the iceberg hit. And now we know how sadly pathetic that turned out to be. But I want to express to you today, if I may, what I want to express is my deep, deep gratitude to all of you for your care and passion during Dave's terrible ordeal? Never. Never have we felt so enveloped and protected in a blanket of love as we have during these long weeks of David's illness. Your attendance here today, the calls, the cards, the visits to the hospital, the visiting, the receptionist downstairs said he was the most popular patient they ever had. The emotional and physical sustenance you provided every day were a perfect lesson to model of faith for Gemila Chesed of the highest level. True friends in a time of need, and you taught us how to be a community of caring when it counts the most. For all this, my family and I, thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, and we wish you all Chaim Tovim Freedom Nachat V'Shalom. Tehei Nashot Shora.
Dave was a man who was larger than life. When he walked into the room, everybody knew he was there. He always had a very infectious smile and a very warm personality. And as I was hearing all the speeches here, I always felt that he embodied the first Mishnah that we say in the morning, Elo Hadrim Sha'adam Ochel Perut Ba'olam Hazeh V'Keren Kayem Ba'olam Haba. These are things that we get the fruits of in this world and the interest in the next world. David, his Gemilus Chasadim was always, his kindness was always infectious, and took my line. Whenever I asked him every day, how you doing? He always said, things couldn't be better. And I knew the punchline to the joke. He had a kind word for people in our community. He cared very much about our shul, and he was even active on the National Council for the Young Israel for our entire shul, caring about our community. And again, going back to the same Mishnah, Hashkamat Beit HaMidrash, David was always at the minyan. That was not something that he had to do, but something that David always wanted to do. He always wanted to be around shul, and he loved Ahavat Shalom Ben Adam L'Chaveiro. Now, nobody can ever be angry around Dave. His love and his warmth embodied all around him. And the last sentence of that Mishnah is the Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. The study of Torah equals them all. But it's not just the study of Torah, but it's taking its lessons and applying them to everyday life. And even when Dave was learning part of our Mishnayos class, his questions were thoughtful and insightful. Dave would always add his special flavor to our Mishnayos class. But what would really bother him would be when there was some sort of injustice to women or to the downtrodden. And if Dave had a question, he would say, I'm going to ask my son. And even while he was in the hospital, I know that Dave kept up and wanted to know where the Mishnayos class was and where the shiur was, just to keep pace with what we were doing. In the Rambam in chapter 14, Halacha Yud, citing the Gemara in Moed Katan, says if somebody passes away in the city, the entire city cannot work until that person's buried. And the Rambam tersely says that if somebody will attend to the mace, then everybody can work. Although few people knew, Dave was one of the founding members of our Chevra Kadisha, taught people in our Chevra Kadisha what to do. Because Dave, as I mentioned before, has been part of the Chevra Kadisha, the Chabura Gomle Chasadim, since he was 16 years old. And as tall as he was in stature, that's how big his heart was. He understood at a very early age what was truly, truly important in this world. He attended to every mace with the utmost kavod and the utmost dignity. And as a member of the Chevra Kadisha, he never wanted to be thanked or recognized for his kindness and his deeds. But here we are today, not thanking him, but acknowledging one of Dave's true fine mitos, that of emulating the midah of chesed that we follow in the pathways of Hashem. Every morning when we daven, we say, Elu hadrim sha'adam ochel perotehem ba'olam hazeh. And we get the Keren Kayemet ba'olam haba. The schar, which has no monetary value in this world, we take to the next world. And Dave, for all you did for our community and for other communities, in true acts of chesed and loving kindness, your bank account is overflowing. There is no way that we can repay you for all of your chesed. And as you have done since you were 16 years old, it is now our turn to ask mechila from you, David Mordechai ben Eliezer, to ask mechila from you in case we have not treated you with the proper kavod. And it's now our turn to ask you to be a melitz yosher for your family, for our community, and for Klal Yisrael.
Very simple. On behalf of the President, the officers, the Board of Trustees, the entire membership of Young Israel of West Hempstead, the deepest sympathies and condolences to the President's family on David's passing, of Mordechai ben Eliezer, our beloved member of 40 plus years. He will sorely be missed. David Shmaso, Tzurah, B'Tzurah Chayim. Shiva will be at the Raymond Residence, 333 Walton Street here in West Hempstead through Monday morning. Shachris daily at 8 a.m. Mincha Marav this week at 6 p.m. and next Sunday at 5:50 p.m.
We received this morning a short note from Rabbi Meir Findel, founding role of our community and the members of the Hebrew Academy in Nassau County, which reads as follows. Just further the passing of our dear friend David Rayman, the husband of our beloved teacher Hank Phyllis, father of our wonderful Hank alumni. To those who had the privilege to know David Rayman, he was a man of warmth and friendship and one who deeply loved his children. The blessings of the month we ask for, Chaim Sheshman Yirah Shamayim, for life that is filled with fear of heaven. This the rabbi's comment that life refers to the marketplace. Fear of heaven must and cannot be rooted in the home, must enter the marketplace as well. Mr. Raymond Allah Hashem worked his religion into the marketplace. Through his love of people, his love of Torah, he truly led a life in the fear of God. His wonderful wife and children will carry on his passionate legacy. Yehei Place of the Kemal Rachamim, concluding Tehillim, will be recited from Beit Shemesh by the grandsons Harry and Guy.
wait. Start again.
Everyone on the wife Phyllis, children Louis, Moshe, and Estee, and daughters-in-law and sons-in-law are not luckily considered available mourners. However, they mourn the loss of their beloved father-in-law, Melissa, and Billy, and Arash. As well as the grandchildren, Chana and Shmuel, Shai, Shlomo, Gabi, Yamin, Adinachaya, Yitzchak, Harry and Sylvia, Noach, Eli, Rafi, Sally, and Sophie, as well as the great-grandson, Daniel, as well as the sister-in-law, Elaine, and cousin Lisa. The interment will take place in Wellwood Cemetery in Farmingdale. Following family members and friends are requested to assemble around the casket in the lobby, accompany their own into the hearse, and also accompany the casket at the cemetery. Billy Shiner, Arash Genjin, Eddie Genjin, Yitzchak Raymond, Tanya Danto, Herb Levinson, Bert Drackman, Lou Miller, Chase Steinberger, and Dean Raymond. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of distinguished rabbis, Jonathan Rosenblatt, Riverdale Jewish Center, Major Polyakov of the Great Synagogue. The family truly is honored by their presence and deeply appreciates their being here this morning. The instructions will be given as far as following the hearse, as far as also accompanying the hearse to Walton Street, the home of David, where, concluding the hill and Wolver's site. Will the pallbearers please begin to assist in the walk?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to accompany the family to the cemetery, we're going to follow the hearse walking just on north on Hempstead Avenue, just past the traffic light. There, the hearse will remain, so that you can go back to your cars to turn around to follow. And then we'll proceed past the Raymond residence and then on to Wellwood Cemetery. Please allow the family to walk out first.
Hi, Jake Appowitz here. I'm going to take the feet down now. Okay. Hold on a second. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Somebody wants to talk to you.
I miss you guys.
Your mother's trying to talk to you. You'll get to her in about 30 seconds. Okay. In any event, I hope that worked out. Okay. It's pretty easy it is to do it. You don't need a lot of technology to make something like that happen. It's just ran off of a freaking webcam on my I have a workstation, but just a webcam, nothing more. And I'm looking at myself on the monitor. It's pretty freaking good. In any event, you should only have Simplest, and that's for some. We shouldn't have to do this again for a while.